I was scrolling through YouTube last night, as one does, and I came across one of Tom Scott's old videos where he and Matt talk about the economics of YouTube and how viable it is to survive producing content for the platform. And while I think many of the things that they raised back in the day about whether it is possible to make a living, I think have changed, and I figured I may as well give a rundown of what is the current state of making content for social media? How do people make money? How do people survive? How do people pay employees? What are these different income avenues, and how does that change from industry to industry? The first and most obvious way that creators make money is through YouTube Adsense. To be eligible for Adsense, currently on YouTube you need 4,000 watch hours in the past year and 1,000 subscribers. But this didn't used to be the case. Back in the day, I remember when there was pretty much no requirements to be eligible for AdSense. You just got paid out pretty much straight away. And then at some point they put some threshold, probably for one, to stop them having to pay out like pennies to so many different people. And as well, I believe their excuse at the time was something along the lines of ensuring that the content was safe. It was probably during one of like the first sort of like advertiser scares. And then they decided to screw that anyway and just run ads across every single video on the platform, assuming it still abided by policies, regardless of whether you were signed up to the AdSense program or not, because money is the real talker in these situations. But just to do some quick maths, AdSense can completely range depending on what industry you're in. You're talking about people who maybe do entertainment stuff, you may get like a couple of dollars per 1,000 views. And finance, you can be talking like 60, 70 or even higher if you're really lucky. And things can range somewhere in between that, like cameras, that can be maybe $20. These are just numbers I've seen pop up throughout the industry throughout the years. But keep the understanding that, you can earn a lot more as a finance creator with very few views than you can as an entertainment creator, especially if you're in the child genre. Once some rules changed within the European Union about being able to collect data on children and advertise to children, that genre effectively got slashed in the amount of money that they could make, at least through AdSense. But now they use some of the other mechanisms that I will discuss later in the video. So right, let's say you have, the CPM and RPM. CPM is cost per mil, meaning the amount that advertisers pay per 1,000 views. And RPM is the amount that the creator makes. So on YouTube, the creator gets a cut of 55% of the total ad revenue, which, fair enough, YouTube does a lot of hosting and things on the back end, and they manage the whole advertiser relationship. So let's say hypothetically you're getting an RPM of $10, which is, if you're in the entertainment genre, phenomenal. If you're in the finance genre, pretty terrible. So for you to make a living, let's say you need $2,000 a month to, just cover costs. You're not doing well, but you're like making bare minimum. So how many views would you need?
$10 per 1,000 views, which means $1 per 100 views. So $2,000 would be 2,000 times 100, which is 200 plus 30 zeros, which is
200,000 views a month to be able to pay basic bills, which is a lot, but is not completely and utterly unachievable. Back in the day, getting 200,000 views, you'd earn way less. But more and more money has been moving into the social media space. Advertisers realize that TV isn't the only way to be able to get customers anymore, that advertising on these platforms is probably much more effective, especially because it has been so undervalued for so long. Other platforms have forms of AdSense, kind of, but they're really pathetic and you just can't even really think about it. Like TikTok, it can pay out some people half decently if they rack up billions of views a year, but it's only in some countries like the US and the UK, and not in big places like, Australia and effectively everywhere on the planet. It's like 6 countries. And then you have like Instagram and Facebook where they have some payouts. I've heard some people do well on Facebook, some don't. And I think Instagram, they've pretty much just given up on paying people out. The only way you can really earn money is through like donations directly from your audience. So people really don't think about that much as like an actual revenue driver. YouTube, once again, is really the only platform that actually tries to pay out creators. Right, on to the next, which tends to be the biggest revenue raiser. AdSense is the first one that people come across, but brand deals is really where people make their money, because you may get, a $10 RPM, but brand deals will pay more than that because it's coming directly from your mouth and you're speaking it directly to your parasocialized audience. And this can kind of come in 2 ways. People may have like a headline sponsor that sponsors everything, or they'll have like different sponsors for each episode of their content. And then sometimes the sponsors sponsor the whole episode, sometimes they sponsor the portion of the episode, and I think that's more about liability, but that's a whole discussion I won't get into here. But even in this arena, you kind of see some contradictions, because you have podcasts that will just have like 5 sponsors back to back to back. And I don't know why that works at all, because I skip past it every single time, but I guess there's some people that actually sit and listen through them. And then you'll have creators like Sam from Wendover who talk about having more than one sponsor highly downgrades the quality of that deal that, people either click on one thing or they click on nothing. And if you give them too many options, too many things that you're trying to push towards them, the audience just doesn't choose any. So whether it's worthwhile having multiple sponsors in one video or just one, I don't know if anyone actually has a definitive answer to that, and probably really just depends on the industry and the genre. You can probably get away with more on a podcast because it's longer form, where a video, it's, much more finite. So this tends to be the second thing that really pops up for people as a revenue driver, but brings in way more than traditional AdSense. So people generally try to use this as their biggest revenue driver, which can get a bit risky when advertisers get scared for reasons beyond their control. Maybe it's an economic downturn, whatever. And if creators are purely reliant on this, it can be hugely detrimental, which is why they use the following methods to bring in extra income so they're not purely reliant on brand sponsors. Kind of quickly, what used to be more relevant back in the day were affiliates. People used to make a lot of money on affiliate deals, and I think people can still do half decently now, but I hear it less and less discussed, probably because it's just a smaller portion of where people derive their income because the others have grown so much. But it just involves having a link in your description. It maybe takes you to Amazon. Then Amazon will pay you a percentage of anything purchased over the next 30 days on their platform from that person, assuming honey hasn't gotten involved. So if you're selling things like earbuds that are worth, 50 cents, you're not going to be making much. But if you're in the genre of selling camera gear, you can be making a ton. Let's say you hypothetically get, a 10% affiliate on products sold. Okay, they buy a $1,000 camera, that's $100 right there in your pocket because someone purchased one thing. And these numbers can get even higher once again in things like the finance genre, when people have direct affiliate deals with certain organizations like crypto companies or investment firms. As a side note, the way the Americans promote their finance products is not legal in a lot of the rest of the Western world. You need to be a registered financial advisor in a lot of countries to be able to promote the stuff that they promote, so they can just absolutely run off and make a mozza while everyone else has to obey certain ethical and legal considerations. But once again, let's say you get 40% on a deal because you have a negotiation with this company and whatever, they can have a longer relationship with the customer, but you get a nice big chunk up front. If the product is like a $5,000 financial product, those people can make so much. But I found that a lot of people, you start off with like the easy Amazon affiliate, but then at some point they can go directly to the company and negotiate a proper deal because they're saying, I've got a full community here who would love to hear more about your product. I'd love to endorse your product, but I know that I can bring direct customers as opposed to just any random person in the world. So let's negotiate a better deal here rather than whatever you give everyone else. Give me a higher percentage. And that tends to work out for a lot of creators, especially as they grow. All right, the next two can probably be switched depending on which one they, pursue first. But let's discuss Patreon donations. Because on things like Instagram, you can accept like donations, and TikTok, but they take a huge percentage of that. And it's not really the way to go in terms of like sustainable revenue. But things like Patreon or Buy Me a Coffee are platforms where people can make a lot. I'll be following along and I'll check someone's Patreon out. They haven't posted there in 2 years, and yet they're still driving an extra $10,000 through that avenue just because people want to help out and donate, and they want to continue that person producing content on their freely accessible platforms like YouTube. And then you have some creators who you're like, oh, it's just four guys bantering around in a podcast like The Yard, and they can bring in like $6 million a year through Patreon alone. And once again, they're not delivering a huge amount of value on the Patreon side. People just want to feel a part of the community, want to support, and maybe get those couple extra benefits. But really, it's much more of a support mechanism for these creators. It's not fully transactional. But yeah, some are able to bring in hugely dedicated audiences and huge amounts of revenue through that. And one person buying into your Patreon can be equivalent to like thousands of free viewers on YouTube. So it's 100% worth pursuing that avenue when the opportunity arises. I just want to jump in here and say that if you'd like to help fund the creation of more of these videos, allow me to put more time, energy, and resources into producing the content that you love, I've got a link down in the description where you can access my Patreon, where for one, you can help fund these videos, as well as gain access to insights, thoughts, stats, and things that I don't, share on my public platforms. You can access that down in the description. Otherwise, on to the rest of the video. Thank you. Okay, before I get into the next major, potentially really lucrative avenue, I've got two that I want to list that are a bit more niche. For one, you have Twitch subs. And this is where you can subscribe to a creator on Twitch, probably for about $5, and you're able to watch their content without ads and support that specific creator. I think everyone at the moment gets a free Twitch sub if you have Amazon Prime. They'll probably go take that away at some point because it will cost them a lot of money. And then how that goes for the future of Twitch's stability, who knows, but that's later's problem. Of this $5, Twitch takes half of it, so the creator gets $2.50, and this can be really, really lucrative for certain creators pursuing this avenue. But it does require you to pretty much stream non-stop every single day to keep people engaged and keep paying. And then additionally, you have licensing deals, where there are some organizations that go to creators that offer to give them a lump sum for their backlog of content, kind of like you've had with the music industry for decades. And I have seen a lot of debate about whether this is or isn't worth it. There are some creators that love it because it gives them this nice lump sum that they can do something with and invest into future content. And there's some people that just say that it's just a really bad business loan that you don't necessarily need, because you're not $50,000 away from becoming the next Mr. Beast. Instead, if you're actually doing well, you're probably literally better off just going to the bank, taking a loan that's effectively a lower interest rate, and you'll do better off with that. So I'd love to hear your thoughts on which one you think is more effective if you need instant cash flow. Okay, now on to the interesting one. You've got merchandise, you've got products, and you've got side businesses. In the beginning, a lot of these don't necessarily bring much, because back in the day, the easiest point of that was merchandise, clothing. And if you sell a hoodie for like $50, but it costs you like $30, $40 to make, and you gotta ship it and whatever, like, you really have to ship a lot to make a lot of money. And most people, it's not really that big part of their pie, unless you're talking about like Logan Paul back in the day, where, he was having like $50 million years back on his channel. Part of that being AdSense, part of that being merchandise, but that was huge for him. But there are now more profitable avenues that people can do depending on your niche, right? Once again, if you're in the finance niche, you create finance products. If you're in the camera niche, maybe you create a camera bag like Peter McKinnon did with Nomadic, or there are so many different avenues now that are more specific to an audience than just a t-shirt. And if you can do this well, you're basically just taking the markup that the sponsor was coming to you with. Because if a sponsor is willing to pay you, let's say $1 million to do a year of deals, you'd be doing pretty well in that situation. If they're willing to pay you that amount, how much are they making on the back end? So you're basically just taking their profit margins for yourself. And the audience will probably like that better as well, because it's more authentically you rather than shilling out for some other brand. It is your own personal, passionate project that your audience is more likely to support. And if you're talking about the most successful examples of recent, you're talking about like KSI and Logan Paul's Prime, which is really not that good of a product, yet it's probably easily worth over $10 billion as a business. So yeah, absolutely, when this is done well, people can run off with huge amounts of cash. But it's also risky because generally you have to put in a bit of money up front in the hopes that people enjoy that service or product. Okay, and now the final way that creators earn money, which is kind of a dying breed, but there were a lot of exclusive deals handed out over the past couple of years, trying to pull people to certain platforms. YouTube was trying to poach streamers from Twitch, paying them a certain huge lump sum for them to be exclusive on their platform. Because obviously YouTube was starting to build out their live streaming platform. They basically needed people to be the testers, like Ludwig, like Valkyrie, like a whole range of creators. Because, obviously when you're starting building these platforms, they're not going to be as good as Twitch. So you kind of need to pay them that sympathy fund of like, please be our ambassador while we figure these things out. And then in response, Twitch started having to pay creators to stay on that platform to keep them going from YouTube, keep them going from other platforms I will not name because they're a bit sketchy. And it kind of became this bidding war. But as of 2025, I believe that every contract has ended between YouTube and Twitch. And Twitch now allows multi-streaming, so you can stream on YouTube and Twitch at the same time, where before they forced you to only stream on one. This also extends to Spotify. Spotify has spent probably over hundreds of millions of dollars keeping certain podcasters exclusive. Whether this be like Joe Rogan or Alex Cooper or Emma Chamberlain, there's a number of creators that have taken deals to, maintain them purely on that platform. I don't know whether this will continue. They probably have more of an incentive to continue because they're not trying to poach creators. Apple isn't coming in saying, we'll pay you a certain amount to be exclusive to iTunes. But it means that if people are going to get one platform and you have the biggest person, they're probably going to pick yours over, Apple Music or the other range of streaming platforms out there. And how these different revenue avenues range in terms of percentage of the overall pie for specific creators can range hugely depending on the industry. Like once again, finance, brand deals and affiliates is probably the biggest portion. If you're in entertainment, brand deals is probably up there, but you can probably do half decently merchandise as well, and AdSense because your viewership is probably you need to be doing well with that, I guess. Or if you're a short form creator, you're not really making much through AdSense because what they pay you is just so much lower. So it's probably going to be purely through brand deals. And if you're a Twitch streamer, it's going to be through your Twitch subs, as well as potentially merchandise, and probably a lot through brand deals as well. While back in the day, it was really unfeasible to make a career on these platforms, now it's whole business strategies to be able to use platforms like YouTube and Instagram to derive revenue for your business or for yourself. While it's easier than ever to be able to pick up a camera and produce a video, the competition is getting higher and higher as well, but it also means there's more and more money in the space. So is it harder or easier to make a living off the internet now? Probably easier because there's more and more money, but it requires a lot more work to find ways to, as I said, stand out. So I hope this was educational to you. I hope it gave you a bit more insight and background on how people make money in this industry. If you would like to learn more about the creator economy and everything that happens in this industry, I've got the perfect playlist for you right here, which talks about so much more.